Hey guys, and welcome to the third episode of the Fantastic Film Factory, the channel that is all about prop building and in-camera movie magic. Today I'm gonna show you how to make your very own Batman latex mask. This tutorial will include the sculpting, casting and painting process for a fully wearable mask. A live cast is required as a sculpting basis, so make sure to check out the first video where I showed you how to make one before you watch this one. The link is in the video description. Now let's stop talking and start making something. The first thing I did was to apply an even layer of clay to the live cast we made earlier. Try to define the desired shape of the mask as soon as possible. Sculpting is a lot easier if you already have material to sculpt with at the places where you need it. It's also important to work with non-fire clay, since this will guarantee a nice and smooth surface, an important characteristic of a Batman mask. Now I just started sculpting and I realized soon that this is going to be by far the most time-consuming process of the project. Sometimes it got incredibly frustrating. I had to start from zero for a couple of times. All in all, I spent about 40 hours in sculpting, and I'm still not 100% satisfied with the design I ended up with. But despite the frustration I experienced so many times, I also got kind of addicted to sculpting. It's incredibly satisfying to watch a character appearing out of a piece of clay, and also a very creative and personal process. A really good tip a friend gave me for creating a smooth sculpt is to build such a simple tool out of a saw blade and a small wooden stick. This tool is really handy for creating a nice and even surface without any dents. I tried out a couple of different designs before I came up with this kind of minimalistic looking mask, which reminds a bit of the Batman mask which can be seen in the Batman vs Superman movie. Of course, you can do whatever design you like. Now it was time for the casting process. For the casting material I used Plaster, since it's cheap and I'm just a poor student. Since this was going to be a fully wearable mask, I had to do a 3-part plaster mold. One piece for the face, one for the back of the head, and one piece for the neck area. The first thing I did was to create a border around the forehead using clay. Make sure to create such key pieces using the clay so that the mold pieces can fit together later on like puzzle pieces. I then covered the piece of the sculpt I wanted to cast with some vegetable oil to prevent the clay from sticking to the plaster. When I was done with that, I started to apply the first layer of plaster. This is called the beauty coat because this is going to be the layer which defines the surface of the final mask. So I made sure to really take my time. If I would have messed up at this stage, I could have started all over again. Now I continued to apply more and more layers of plaster until the plaster cast was about 8 cm thick. After that I waited until the plaster dried and removed the clay walls. I also made sure to cover the rim of the cast piece with a thick layer of Vaseline, otherwise the plaster of the other cast pieces would have stuck to it. I then repeated the whole process 2 more times. When the plaster was fully hardened, I used a chisel, a hammer and a lot of caution to carefully take the 3 mold pieces apart. I ended up with these 3 mold pieces. After cleaning them with a garden hose and an old toothbrush, I realized that the insides of the mold pieces were far from perfect. There were a lot of dents, cracks and other imperfections which would lead to a bad casting quality. So I did my best to fill all those gaps with some more wet clay. I then reassembled the form, which left me with a negative form of my clay cast, which could now be filled with liquid latex. I now started to mix latex with some black wall paint, which hopefully will give me kind of a base color to work with. It's also a good idea to thin the latex down with a bit of water. This will allow the latex to more easily get into small details and will result in a better casting quality. Since I'm stupid, I didn't do that. I then poured the mixture into the form and swirled it around so that every spot of the inside of my form was covered with latex. This was a really tough job since the form weighed about 30 kilos. I then placed the form upside down onto a piece of cardboard so that the excess could drip out of the form. I waited until the latex dried and repeated the whole process about 4 more times until the latex layer was about 3 mm thick and fully dried. I could then carefully take the almost finished mask out of the form. The mask was really dirty, so I gave it a quick wash using some water. When the mask was dry, I put it over the plaster head and began to remove all those tiny little excess pieces, which were created when the latex leaked through the gaps between the plaster molds. I also cut out the mouth, eye and nose pieces. When I was done with that, the mask still looked really rough and not really pretty, so I took some Plaster, which is actually sprayable rubber used for painting cars and other vehicles, and painted the whole mask with about 3 coats of Plaster. This treatment created a better surface and took away some of the imperfections. And there you have it. A fully wearable Batman mask, which can now be used for cosplay, LARPing or just as a nice piece of decoration. And now you know how to make a fully wearable Batman latex mask. I gotta be honest, I'm not 100% satisfied, but you know, I really learned a lot, so hopefully the next mask I'm going to make will look a bit better. And if you're doing such a Batman mask project by yourself, I'd just love to see the results, so just send me an email with a picture of your version to this email right here. Well, I guess that's it for today. Thanks for watching and remember to always stay creative.